Hey guys, tonight we're going to wander back into the winding halls and candlelit corners of medieval times, not to visit kings or charge into battles, but to quietly peek behind veils, into chambers, and into the powdered faces that shape centuries of beauty. It's going to be gentle, curious, and just strange enough that you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes there without questioning every part of your modern skincare routine. Before we begin tonight's journey through history, I have a small favor to ask. If you're enjoying this peaceful corner of the past, please consider giving the video a like or subscribing to the channel so you won't miss any of our upcoming nighttime adventures. It truly helps this little channel grow, and it means so much to me. If you're still awake enough to type a few words, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. I find it so heartwarming to see history gently unfolding across time zones, quietly shared together. I sincerely hope this historical story is gentle enough to ease you into sleep, but there's always a small risk. It might be too interesting. And if you do happen to stay awake through the whole thing, at least you'll walk away with a bit of new knowledge. And if that's what keeps you up tonight, well, I'd say that's worth it. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in front of a mirror, but not the kind you're used to. This one's a little warped, its surface slightly smoky, polished not with chemicals, but with hours of cloth buffing and elbow grease. It's nestled on a wooden table in the corner of a drafty room lit by the soft glow of beeswax candles. The mirror doesn't show you everything, not your pores or the stray eyelash on your cheek, but it gives you just enough to check whether your veil sits correctly, whether your cheeks have the right amount of color, whether you look, well, worthy. It's the 1300s, and the concept of beauty, your beauty, isn't just for pleasure, it's social currency. Your skin, your hair, your eyes, they're all messages, not of self-expression exactly, but of virtue, status, health, and sometimes divine favor, here in the manor or city home, where you're lucky enough to be born into the upper rungs of society. Everything is slightly more delicate. The windows have glass, thin as eggshells, wavy and distorted. The air smells of herbs drying from the rafters, and just a hint of the perfumed oils resting on the table beside you. You lean in, adjusting your coif. Pale skin is the goal, so pale, in fact, that it looks like you've barely seen the sun. The fairer your face, the less manual labor you've done. And the less labor you've done, the higher your family must sit on the social ladder. It's beauty as biography. That's why the powder you've dabbed across your cheeks is so important. It's a subtle blend, maybe made with ground alabaster, flour, or even a bit of lead, though no one quite understands how dangerous that is yet. It clings to your face in a matte layer, giving your skin a porcelain smoothness, especially under candlelight. You don't smile too broadly. It might crack. Now, your lips. Red lips are desirable, but only just a flush of color, like you've been out for a brisk walk, not like you've eaten a strawberry tart. You might use a berry stain, or if you're feeling bold, a mixture with a dash of mercury. It tingles, maybe burns, but fashion isn't always gentle. The church frowns on these enhancements. Beauty, they argue, should be natural. Modesty is virtuous. But even the priest's own sisters and nieces dab a bit of tint on their cheeks before feast days. Because appearances matter, not just in courtship, but in court, in commerce, in everything. You shift your weight on the uneven floorboards. Your shoes are pointed. Your gown fitted with care. Beauty isn't just about your face. It flows through posture, poise, even silence. The quiet, composed woman is elegant. Loud laughter? That's best left to the tavern girls, or so they say. You peek out the window. A peasant woman walks past, her skirts muddied, her skin darker from the sun. She's beautiful, too, in her way. Broad-shouldered, strong, with hair plaited tightly to keep out the hay and heat. But her beauty doesn't count in the same way. It won't get her poems or portraits. It's useful, not celebrated. Inside, your own hair is hidden beneath a linen veil, or maybe wrapped under a hood lined with squirrel fur. Blonde hair is the fashion of the day, especially if it's natural. If not, well, you can bleach it with ash and sunlight, but you mustn't let anyone see the process. Vanity is still a sin, after all. Better to appear effortless, as if you woke up radiant. A knock on the door, soft but firm. Maybe your maid, bringing a basin of rose water, or perhaps your mother, reminding you that the local lord's son will be at dinner. You breathe in. One last glance in the mirror. Historians still argue whether women of the time truly believed in the ideal they chased, or if they simply performed it, like a daily ritual, equal parts devotion and survival. Was it belief, or was it duty? Or did belief eventually grow from doing it so long? You step back. The candle flickers, casting strange shadows. Your reflection shimmers. Softer now. Not because you've changed, but because time always does this, blurring the edges, leaving us with impressions instead of clarity. And that's where you begin, at the edge of the glass, in a world where beauty isn't just something to have, but something to uphold. You wake the next morning with sunlight seeping through the shutters. It's a soft light, filtered by thick, uneven glass that bends the outside world into wavy patterns. Your body aches a little from the wooden bed and thin mattress. But that's not unusual. You sit up slowly, careful not to smudge your face with sleep. There's a basin of water waiting for you, lukewarm and faintly scented with lavender leaves. You splash your face, pat it dry with a rough linen cloth, and begin your quiet routine. The first thing you check for is sun exposure. Were the curtains fully drawn last night? Did the fire reflect too brightly off your cheeks? You hope not. A darker patch of skin, not even a tan, just a slight warmness, could mean whispers at the next gathering. The ladies will look closely, pretending not to, and someone will raise her eyebrows ever so slightly, as if to say, "Oh, working outdoors now, are we?" Because here, in your little corner of the 14th century, the color of your skin is more than skin deep. It tells a story, and not always a flattering one. Pale skin is the ultimate symbol of wealth, because only those who are rich can afford to stay indoors. You don't work in fields. You don't deliver goods in the sun. You sit, embroidering, reading, attending to guests, under vaulted ceilings and heavy velvet drapes. That's why your morning routine includes more than just washing. You reach for your powder box, carved from a block of ivory and held shut with a tiny brass clasp. Inside, crushed white lead, maybe mixed with vinegar or rose oil. You know the stories. Women who fell ill, their teeth loosening, their hair thinning. But that was probably a different mixture. Yours is safe, probably. You dab the powder onto your face, blending it down your neck and collarbone. It clings easily, turning your skin matte and uniform. And then, just a hint of pink on the cheeks, just enough to suggest youth, not exertion. You're not supposed to look healthy from work. You're supposed to look blessed. The irony is, many noble women aren't especially healthy. You eat rich food but little fresh produce. Clean water isn't always available, and you don't move much. But none of that matters in the mirror. What matters is the illusion. You remember your cousin, who spent an entire summer cloistered indoors after a short walk under the sun turned her arms a dusty brown. She was given vinegar soaks and a strange mask made of crushed almonds and goose fat. It took months to fade, and even then, the mark of it remained. She eventually married, but not to the man she'd hoped for. His family wanted someone more delicate. The pressure runs deep, and not just for women. You've heard the boys talk, noble sons who cover freckles with chalk, who keep wide hats pinned tightly under their chins. A freckle might as well be a flaw, a reminder that your bloodline has strayed too close to the laboring classes. Historians still argue whether this obsession with pallor was more about class than beauty. Was it truly seen as attractive, or simply as a way to display privilege? Either way, the effect is the same. You avoid the sun like it's war. You fan yourself in shady gardens. You walk the long way to avoid a sunny courtyard. Of course, not everyone has that luxury. In the marketplace, you pass women with bold, browned arms and faces lined by sun and wind. They're beautiful in their own right, eyes sharp, cheeks glowing with real color, but their kind of beauty is invisible to the upper classes. It's called rough or weathered. No one writes sonnets about calloused hands, and yet you sometimes envy them. They laugh loudly, full-bellied, when a merchant tells a joke. They don't tiptoe across cold stone floors or worry about the seam of their veil sitting just right. Their beauty is active, lived in. Yours is fragile, beautiful only if preserved. You turn away from the market and step into the chapel. Even here, in sacred space, the rules follow you. A noble woman's place in the pews depends partly on her face. Red lips are frowned upon, cheeks too pink, a quiet scolding from the older women, but too plain, and someone will say, "You've let yourself go." You sit, hands folded neatly, eyes downcast. A hymn echoes softly through the stone arches, and for a moment, you forget all of it, the powder, the mirrors, the whispers. But when the sunlight shifts through the stained glass, casting a bold stripe of light across your lap, you inch backward into the shadows again. Later that evening, you overhear the serving girls talking in the courtyard. One of them has concocted a new beauty recipe, something involving goose grease and crushed lily petals. They giggle, not knowing you're listening. One girl admits she used to think pale women were sickly looking, like ghosts. But now, she says, she understands. It's how you know someone's important. You smile, just barely. Beauty, after all, isn't always about looking lovely. Sometimes it's about reminding others where they belong, and where you do. The powder, the shadows, the rituals, they're all small acts of belonging. And yet, as the candlelight softens the corners of the room that night, you let yourself wonder what it might be like to walk freely in the sun, to let your face warm and your arms darken. Just once, just long enough to feel real. But tomorrow's gathering will be held indoors, as always. You'll wear your high-collared gown, your veil freshly laundered, and your face, your pale, powdered, perfect face, will be ready. You're sitting by a small window now, sewing in slow, methodical loops, the afternoon light dimming behind embroidered drapes. The needle glides through fabric with a gentle hiss. The house is quiet except for the occasional creak of timber or the flutter of pigeons on the roof. Across the room, your cousin Anne leans into a mirror, squinting, holding a tiny pair of tweezers. She plucks a single hair, then another. It's her hairline she's working on. Specifically, she's trying to raise it. You pause your stitching, half watching as she adjusts the veil that's pinned to the crown of her head. The baby hairs near her temples are already gone. She's working her way up to the forehead now, eyes wide and focused, skin pinched and pink. The more forehead a woman shows, the more elegant she's believed to be. A high brow is the mark of grace, like the tall arches of a cathedral, or the domes painted with saints. It's not just fashion, it's almost sacred. This particular look, the elevated forehead, arched and smooth, is prized among the upper classes, especially in France and Italy. It makes the face appear longer, more refined, more angelic. You've heard the older ladies say, it echoes the Virgin's purity. Never mind that the Virgin Mary is usually painted by men. The images persist. Some women go further. They don't just pluck their hairlines. They rub them with walnut oil or vinegar to weaken the roots. Some even shave, carefully, with knives meant for quills. It's risky. A small slip and the hair never grows back properly. But beauty requires a little danger. Anne looks over at you now, brows slightly raised, as if waiting for your approval. You offer a soft nod, though you secretly wonder how far you'll go when it's your turn. You've only just begun to thin the edges. Slowly, carefully. You haven't told anyone yet. The thought of pushing your hairline back on purpose still feels unnatural, even when you see how admired it is. Just a little more, Anne says softly, wincing. Mother says the bishop's niece has a forehead so high you could land a pigeon on it. You stifle a laugh. The thought is ridiculous, but you know she's not really joking. You set your needlework aside and walk over, picking up a scrap of linen to dab the redness from her skin. You've both read the same court poetry. Foreheads are praised more than smiles, sometimes more than eyes, and always, always. A woman's beauty is described in fractions: the length of her brow, the slant of her cheek, the curve of her chin, as if her value could be measured with a ruler and quill. Historians still argue whether these beauty ideals were born from genuine admiration or simply the repetitive imitation of royal portraits. The nobility had high foreheads, so the rest copied. But it's also possible the opposite happened, that artists drew them this way because that's how women began to look. The truth, like your hairline, is somewhere in the middle. A servant passes by the doorway carrying a basket of herbs. She pauses and peers in, curious, watching Anne's ritual. Her own hair is thick, unplucked, braided tightly back for labor. She doesn't look disapproving, just intrigued. In her world, a high forehead doesn't help plant wheat or carry water. It might even be a hazard, exposed to sun and dust. But in your world, beauty is crafted, often painfully. You don't just wake up to it, you carve it into your skin. Each pluck, each sting, is a small sacrifice to a collective vision of loveliness. And still, you wonder, what happens to all this effort once you're married? Does it fade, hidden under hoods and wimples? Or do you keep doing it, even as you age, not for others, but because it's become part of you? The idea of stopping is somehow more terrifying than the ritual itself. Later that evening, as supper winds down, you catch sight of Lady Gertrude across the hall. Her forehead is impossibly high, hairline barely visible beneath her pearl-edged cap. Her face glows with a faint layer of powder, her expression serene. Everyone calls her beautiful, not in passing, but reverently. So beautiful, they say, like a statue or a saint. She turns and smiles at you, thin-lipped, and for a second, you try to see what they see. She's elegant, certainly, poised, but beautiful, or simply shaped to match the mold. You excuse yourself from the table early, retreating to your room, where the fire is still burning low. The mirror on the wall reflects your face in flickers of gold and shadow. You sit, tilt your head, and gently lift your veil. Then you reach for the tweezers. Just a few. You pinch the base of each hair, give it a firm tug. It stings, but not badly. You dab the spot with cold water and repeat. One here, one there, carefully, evenly, like pruning a hedge in spring. There's something oddly calming about it. You understand Anne now. It's not just about looking a certain way, it's the control. In a life where most decisions are made by fathers, brothers, or future husbands, this is yours, your forehead, your choice. And though you can't say it aloud, there's power in that. By the time the fire turns to embers, your hairline is just a whisper higher, barely noticeable, but enough to feel it. You blow out the candle, letting the room fall into darkness. And for the first time, you wonder if beauty really begins in the mirror or in the hands that shape it. The morning air smells faintly of ash and old rose water. You sit in your room with the shutters half closed to keep the sun out, holding a tiny tin compact that clinks softly when you open it. Inside is a pink paste, creamy and faintly glimmering, made from ingredients you're not supposed to ask too many questions about. It was expensive. Your aunt brought it from France, but it promises a gentle flush, one that mimics health without suggesting labor. Your fingers tremble slightly as you lift a sliver of linen, dabbing the rouge carefully onto your cheeks. You've learned not to smear it like the younger girls do. It should look like a whisper, not a shout. Just enough color to suggest that your heart is strong, your blood rich, and your skin naturally warm, even though it's covered with layers of lead and chalk. There's a knock at the door. You call out softly, and your maid enters with a tray of dried figs and bread. She pretends not to notice what you're doing, but you know she sees. She always does. Sometimes she even helps you mix your creams, grinding petals with a mortar and pestle, stirring in droplets of vinegar or egg white. Today's rouge is a new blend. Your cousin says it was popular in Milan last winter. It includes crushed cinnabar, bright, vivid, and dangerously laced with mercury. The thought makes your stomach tighten, but you smooth the color onto your cheek anyway. Blending it gently, the effect is lovely, rosy, alive. You lean into the mirror and smile. The pink stands out just enough against your pale skin to draw the eye without drawing suspicion. Still, you've heard whispers at court, women whose gums turned gray, whose minds slipped into confusion, who began to tremble after years of using the wrong cosmetics. No one speaks of them once they disappear. It's easier to say they were sickly to begin with. Historians still argue whether medieval women truly understood the risks. Some records suggest they did. There are warnings in old herbal texts, notes scribbled in the margins by cautious monks. But others say the danger was dismissed in favor of fashion. After all, what's a little sickness compared to beauty? You've seen the difference it makes. Last spring, Lady Brenna arrived at the festival in a gown of green silk and cheeks like two summer apples. She didn't speak much. She didn't need to. Everyone watched her. They leaned in when she passed, giggled behind their fans, and the young knight from Westgate nearly tripped over his own sword trying to catch her eye. That was the power of a well-placed blush. Later, people whispered that she wasn't actually so lovely, that her skin was too dull, her lips too thin, but that night, no one could tell. The paint had done its job. You remember standing beside her, your own face scrubbed too clean, your cheeks barely flushed with beet juice and wine. You'd felt invisible, and worse, you'd felt plain. That's when you'd asked your aunt for something stronger, something imported. You place the rouge down on the table and touch your cheek again, gently. It's warming beneath your fingers, as if the mercury is beginning its work. Your skin tingles faintly. You pretend it's the feeling of beauty settling in. There are other recipes, of course. Some women use strawberries boiled in wine, or powdered coral, or even sheep's blood mixed with flour, but none of them last as long. That's why cinnabar remains the favorite, even among those who claim to be too pious for makeup. They'll call it natural enhancement, or say it's only for feast days. But their color never fades, even by candlelight. You've learned to lie a little too. When the priest asked why your cheeks were so bright during Lent, you said you'd been walking briskly. When your uncle joked about young women painting their faces like tavern girls, you laughed politely and looked away. It's a game everyone plays. In the garden after Mass, you join the other ladies under the arbor. The talk is soft, laced with compliments and caution. One girl mentions a merchant's daughter who was banned from the monastery for wearing painted cheeks. Another says the queen herself uses crushed pearls in her powder. You all pretend to be scandalized. Then someone asks for the recipe. It's odd, you think, how something as simple as red on the face can carry so much weight. Too much, and you're vain. Too little, and you're dull. Just the right amount, and suddenly, you're seen, heard, desired, even if no one admits it. The older women know this best. Their faces may be lined, but their color remains steady, drawn on each morning with fingers that have practiced the ritual for decades. They pass their mixtures down like secrets, whispering them to daughters, nieces, even favored servants. That evening, after the feast, you return to your room and remove your veil. You lean close to the mirror again, watching the rouge fade in patches. Your skin feels warm, too warm, but the flush still glows under the candlelight. You take a damp cloth and gently wipe your face. The color smears, then vanishes, leaving your skin pale and slightly irritated. There's a faint metallic smell you can't quite scrub away. You close the compact and tuck it back into your drawer, hiding it beneath a folded scarf. As you climb into bed, you glance once more at your reflection. Just a hint of pink remains on your cheek. You wonder how long you'll use it, whether someday, long from now, your hands will still reach for rouge out of habit, even when no one's looking. Maybe by then, the ingredients will be safer. Or maybe not. Maybe beauty will always ask for something in return. But tonight, for now, you sleep, your face scrubbed clean, your dreams tinged just slightly rose. The next morning arrives with a low gray sky and the smell of rain in the air. You pull your shawl tight as you make your way through the cloister walkway, your footsteps quiet against the damp stone. Today is a holy day, which means the usual rouge and powder stay in the drawer. You're barefaced, or at least as close to it as appearances allow. The chapel bell chimes once, twice, echoing through the garden. You pass under the stone archway and into the hush of the sanctuary, where candles flicker and smoke curls upward like threads of prayer. The pews fill slowly with women in subdued colors, heads bowed, hands folded. Even so, you can't help noticing which ones are still wearing a little color. A faint blush here, a glimmer of powder there. Technically forbidden, quietly forgiven. The sermon begins, and the priest's voice rolls across the vaulted ceiling. He speaks of vanity, of the dangers of temptation, of Eve and the mirror and the loss of innocence, and then, inevitably, of painted faces. Beware, he intones, the snares of the devil, wrapped in rouge and kohl. True beauty is meekness. The humble heart does not stain her cheeks with deceit. You've heard these words before. They are always spoken the same way, firm, rehearsed, vaguely disappointed, but they rarely land the same way twice. Some women bow their heads, others glance around the room, and a few, especially the older ones, meet his gaze without flinching. Their cheeks are as smooth as polished ivory. They know the game. They've been playing longer than the priest has been preaching. You sit quietly, eyes on the stone floor, trying not to fidget. Your face feels different without the usual layers. Lighter, but also vulnerable, like you've left the house without a veil. You wonder if others see the same thing, or if they see you more clearly without the color. After the service, you linger in the courtyard, standing beneath an awning as rain begins to patter softly on the flagstones. A group of women chat in low voices, and soon the conversation turns, inevitably, to appearances. One woman mentions a letter she received from her sister in Florence. "The nuns there," she says with a sly smile, "sell rosewater tinctures on the side. For skin ailments, of course." The group laughs. You do too, gently. Because it's always like this. The same sermon that condemns the use of rouge never stops its listeners from asking where to buy it. And some of the harshest voices, well, they're often the ones who reapply in secret. Historians still argue whether the church's disapproval of cosmetics came from spiritual doctrine or from social control. Perhaps it was both. Some theologians feared that altering your appearance was a kind of dishonesty, a way of tricking others into admiration, and thereby pulling attention away from God. Others believed it simply encouraged pride, which, as you know, is a slippery slope. Pride leads to vanity, which leads to sin, which leads, well, you've heard the rest. But there's also something else beneath it, a deeper discomfort. The idea that women might wield power through appearance, that a painted cheek could be as persuasive as a noble title, that beauty might outshine authority, even holy authority. You feel it most at events like today, where devotion is expected to express itself through plainness. But plainness, you've noticed, is not the same as invisibility. The women still notice each other. They still admire, critique, compare. The desire to be seen never fully leaves. It just changes clothes. Later that day, back at home, you sit at your writing table and pull out a letter from your cousin in Normandy. Her words are small and precise, full of news and gossip. She mentions a scandal, an abbess caught with a mirror in her private chamber and a small box of ochre. She's been removed from her post, quietly. Ridiculous, your cousin writes, as if the saints weren't painted with red cheeks in every window. You smile at that, because she's right. The stained glass above the altar, the frescoes on the chapel walls, They're full of women with luminous skin and soft pink lips. The Virgin Mary herself is often shown with the blush of youth, radiant and serene, painted by men, praised by priests, admired by all. So, where exactly is the line? You look at your own small mirror, propped beside your comb. It reflects only part of your face, the corner of your mouth, the edge of your brow. You imagine what the priest might say if he saw you reapplying rouge tomorrow. He'd frown, maybe mutter a verse, but he wouldn't really see you. He'd see a symbol, a warning, a story about temptation, dressed in velvet. And you'd still be wondering whether you looked too pale, too tired, too soft around the jaw. The rules shift so quickly. One day, the church warns against vanity. The next, a noblewoman is praised for looking angelic. A duchess arrives powdered and veiled, and everyone says she looks divinely untouched, even though you know how long she spent at her mirror. You wonder if holiness ever really had anything to do with it, or if it's always been about control, about deciding who gets to be admired and who doesn't. As evening draws in, the rain thickens, tapping softly on the window panes. You light a single candle and let its glow warm your fingers. Then, slowly, you reach again for the compact. You dip your finger into the rouge, just a touch, a faint dab on each cheek. There's no feast tonight, no guests, no reason, really. But you look in the mirror, and for a moment, you smile. Not because you look prettier, but because you look familiar, like yourself, but steadier, braver. Maybe you close the lid and blow out the candle. In the dark, your cheeks still hold a bit of color. Not for them, not for approval, just for you. You wake before the sun, a little chilled despite the weight of your blanket. A soft drizzle continues from last night's rain, tapping on the wooden shutters. The world outside your manor in Europe feels hushed, soaked in morning quiet. You rise slowly, dress, and make your way to the library, where the air always smells faintly of parchment and dust. There's a new scroll on the table, a gift from your uncle, who travels often and trades with merchants from the East. The characters are unfamiliar, inked with care, their vertical flow like raindrops running down a window pane. You unroll the scroll carefully, revealing a painted image beneath the calligraphy. A woman with jet black hair, skin pale as porcelain, and teeth completely black. You blink, surprised at first. Then you lean closer. Her robes are layers of silken hues, and her face is painted in that ethereal stillness you've only seen in holy icons. Her eyebrows sit impossibly high on her forehead, no longer where brows usually grow, but painted as thin curves near the hairline. Her lips are tiny, red as cherry blossoms, shaped into an almost otherworldly smile. But it's the teeth, lacquered and dark, that pull your attention and hold it. This is beauty in Heian-era Japan, thousands of miles from your own world, across mountains and seas. Another culture shaped its own ideals of grace, elegance, and feminine allure. And it's both strange and familiar. You settle onto the bench, chin resting in your palm, letting the image sink in, here, in this faraway society. Fair skin is prized too, but it's not just about avoiding the sun. It's about creating contrast. The whiter the face, the deeper the black of the teeth, the bolder the crimson of the lips. It's not natural beauty that's admired. It's deliberate beauty, constructed, ceremonial. In Heian, Japan, court women spend hours preparing for appearances. They wear layer upon layer of robes, sometimes 12 deep, chosen not just for color, but for how those colors interact, like poetry in fabric. They blacken their teeth with a special solution, ohaguro, made from iron filings, vinegar, and tea. The process stains the enamel into a glossy obsidian hue, and they pluck out their eyebrows, just as women do in your world. But instead of raising the hairline, they repaint the brows higher up the forehead in delicate ink strokes. The result is haunting, like a face half dreamed, floating between reality and ritual. Historians still argue whether these practices were about status, modesty, or a deeper expression of inner virtue. Likely, it was all of these. In Heian poetry, beauty is always paired with discipline. A woman's stillness, her silence, her grace in movement, they're as important as her face. To be admired is to be composed. Every gesture matters. Even the way one walks across tatami mats can be an expression of beauty. You imagine the daily life of a court lady there, rising early, avoiding mirrors, since they are considered tools of vanity, spending hours writing poems, painting fans, selecting robe colors according to the seasons, applying rice powder to the face until it glows. Not with life, but with restraint. Her blackened teeth aren't grotesque, they're elegant. They tell a story, that she belongs to a world of culture, not labor, that she's already married or preparing for marriage, as ohaguro often signifies a shift into womanhood. In that world, smiling with white teeth might be seen as childish, rural, improper. The darker the enamel, the deeper the refinement. You sit back and trace the outline of the painted figure with your eyes again. She looks so calm, so distant, not because she's unreachable, but because she's created herself that way. Every detail is a choice, and that kind of beauty, while unfamiliar to you, makes perfect sense. The more you think about it, the more you see the parallels. Your own painted cheeks, your powdered forehead, your careful wardrobe, the long sleeves and lowered voice, the modest walk, the layers of performance. It's not only Japan or France or England, it's everywhere. Different materials, different rituals, but the same echo, beauty, everywhere as a form of language. You wonder if the women in Kyoto ever tire of it, if they wish, just once, to laugh too loud or walk too quickly, if they ever leave their painted fans behind and race through the fields like girls again. You wonder because you do. Still, there's a certain admiration that creeps in. The patience, the intention, the ability to become one's own portrait. It's not vanity, not really. It's art. And in their world, as in yours, art is sacred. Later that day, you bring the scroll to your mother. She nods as she studies the image. They say their noble women don't speak unless spoken to, she murmurs, and their hands never move unless they must. You look at your own hands, which are still red from sewing this morning, rough around the knuckles, not very elegant. Your mother smiles, but it's the kind of smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. Still, she adds, such beauty can't be comfortable. You nod. Neither is yours. As night falls, you tuck the scroll away gently and light a single lamp. Its glow casts the painted woman into warm relief again. You sit quietly, watching her disappear into shadow, and you think about what it means to transform your body into something meant to be admired but never touched, to be seen, but only from a distance, to be beautiful, but not entirely human. You lie down with those thoughts still lingering. The pillow cradles your head, and the fabric at your throat feels heavier than usual. but you don't push it away. Tonight, you let it rest there, like a silken robe layered carefully for show. And in your dreams, a woman with blackened teeth smiles softly, her sleeves trailing through moonlight. The next morning, your reflection greets you with a whisper of dishevelment. Stray hairs curl along your temples, defying the pins that held them in place through the night. You sit at your vanity table, gently smoothing each strand into order, coaxing your hair back beneath its veil. Today is not a day for show. There's no festival, no noble visitors. So, your hair, as it so often must, will remain hidden. But even in its hiding, it matters. In your world, a woman's hair is rarely just hair. It's modesty, identity, temptation, and pride all rolled into one braided length. And in most places, it is meant to be concealed, covered by linen, tucked beneath silk, folded under velvet hoods, or draped with netted coifs. The more respectable the woman, the less of her hair is seen. You remember your grandmother's saying, "A wise woman's beauty shines beneath fabric, not through it." She wore a tight wimple every day of her life, even when alone. Her hair turned gray long before you ever saw it. Today, you choose a hood of warm brown wool, lined with rabbit fur. It hugs your head and sits low on your brow. You add a sheer veil atop it, light, gauzy, and pinned with care. It takes longer than you'd like, but you've practiced enough that your hands move with quiet precision. There's a paradox in all this. You realize the effort to hide your hair often takes more time than it would to display it. Your maid spends an hour curling hers each week, only to wrap it beneath a snood. The fashion, of course, changes constantly. In some courts, revealing even a wisp of hair is scandalous. In others, letting a golden curl peek out is considered flirtation. Not quite sinful, but close enough to raise an eyebrow. Historians still argue whether the widespread covering of women's hair in medieval Europe came primarily from Christian modesty, or if it had older cultural roots, borrowed and blended through centuries of shifting influence. Either way, by your time, it's deeply ingrained. The Virgin is always painted veiled. Saints never wear their hair loose. And so neither, really. Do you? You think about the new girl in town, the one from Flanders, who wore her hair in 2 thick braids down her back last week. The entire market buzzed. Some called her wicked. Others just stared. A few, silently, admired her boldness. You weren't sure what you felt. Your own hair is thick and wavy, difficult to manage. In secret moments, you sometimes let it fall down your back, just to feel the weight of it. There's power in that too. Not the power of display, but the power of knowing what you're hiding. You brush it before bed with long, steady strokes, careful not to pull too hard. No one teaches you how to do this, only that it must be done. Clean hair beneath a veil is like a well-kept secret. Today, you help your younger cousin prepare for her betrothal dinner. She's nervous, hands trembling slightly as she fiddles with the pins on her head wrap. You help her redo it, smoothing the fabric, twisting the ends just so. You remind her to keep her hairline visible, but not her hair. Her future husband's family will be watching closely. First impressions, as always, sit between decorum and illusion. They say his sister wears a jeweled cap, your cousin whispers, with gold threads and everything. You nod, even though you've never seen such a thing in person. You've only read of them, or seen sketches in illuminated manuscripts. The most elaborate headpieces belong to the wealthiest. and the most watched. And then there are wigs, reserved mostly for the elite, and even then, often worn under hoods or for special occasions. You've seen one once, an elaborate auburn construction made of horsehair, fitted over a silk mesh base. It was strange, almost unsettling, to see a woman with two heads of hair, but she was considered breathtaking. Her natural tresses never moved, never fell out of place. Of course, wigs come with their own risks: heat, lice, discomfort. But like rouge and powder, they promise something greater than comfort: admiration. You think about that as you escort your cousin down to the banquet hall. Her veil is perfect now, and though her hair is unseen, everyone notices the shape of it beneath the layers. It creates an outline, elegant, rounded, proper, like a figure in a fresco. You see nods of approval from the older women. That's what beauty is, here. Not presence, but presentation. Later, you step outside for air. The wind has picked up, tugging at your veil. You pull it tight under your chin and tilt your face to the sky. For a moment, you imagine what it might feel like to let your hair whip freely in the breeze. Just once. Just to remember it belongs to you. But you tuck the thought away. There are rules, and you've learned how to live inside them. Still, you smile to yourself, because you know a secret beneath every hood, every pin, every solemn veil. There is a story no one sees, a silent declaration, a choice made again and again. To hide is not always to surrender. And beauty, even when covered, still pulses quietly underneath. The wind carries a sharper chill today, and as you walk along the outer corridor of the manor house, you pass a group of squires laughing beneath the eaves, their breath misting in the morning air. They're adjusting their tunics, straightening belts, brushing dust from their sleeves with the care of young men who know they're being watched, even if no one is looking. You pause, watching them from behind a stone column. One boy, a tall one with a shock of curling blonde hair, tightens the laces on his jerkin until the fabric pulls snug around his chest. Another frowns at his reflection in a polished shield, smoothing his hair with both palms. The others tease him, of course, but the teasing is gentle, familiar. It's part of the ritual, because men have beauty standards too. They're just less often spoken aloud. You've seen how they carry themselves at court, shoulders pulled back, tunics perfectly pressed, boots shining like mirrors. A good appearance for a man doesn't mean softness. It means strength with elegance, agility with control, broad shoulders, a straight back, hair that curls but never frizzes, hands that are calloused but not cracked. In many circles, especially among knights and nobles, a well-kept appearance signals more than vanity. It speaks of discipline, of breeding. The way a man wears his cloak or styles his beard can elevate his reputation, or quietly erode it. You remember a ball from 2 winters ago. The heir to a neighboring duchy arrived in a tunic that was 1 season out of date, too loose at the shoulders, the embroidery too sparse. The women noticed, so did the men. And though no one said anything outright, his name stopped appearing in conversations about possible alliances. Historians still argue whether male beauty in the medieval period was a matter of fashion, status, or survival. Likely, it was all 3. Knights were supposed to be warriors, but also poets. Kings wore armor in the morning and velvet in the evening. A man might spend an hour composing verses for a lady, and another hour trimming his beard into a neat point before presenting them. You've heard your older brother complain about it, about how much fuss is required before a feast or gathering. The hours spent adjusting his hose, smoothing the front of his tunic so the embroidered crest sits exactly right. But he still does it, every time, because he knows what's at stake. You think back to your childhood, when you'd watch the older boys practice swordsmanship in the yard. At the time, you thought it was all about strength. But now, you realize much of it was theater. The way they held themselves, the rhythm of their movements, the graceful dismounting from horses. They were rehearsing not just for battle, but for attention. Today, you find yourself at a fitting. Your younger cousin is being measured for his first formal doublet, a deep blue, trimmed with gold. The tailor pulls the fabric taut around his torso, adjusts the sleeves, steps back to assess the silhouette. He doesn't speak much, but you can see the calculations behind his eyes. Is this cut flattering? Will it make the boy appear taller, broader? Meanwhile, your cousin stands awkwardly, unsure where to place his hands. He's at the age where beauty is still embarrassing, still something that happens to other people. Afterward, he whispers to you, "Do you think it looks silly?" You smile and shake your head. Not silly, just important. Later that evening, the great hall fills with voices, music, the scent of roasting lamb. You sit near the fire, watching the room shift and swell. The men arrive in waves, some in bold colors, others in more somber grays and browns. But each has chosen carefully. Even the simplest garb has been arranged with purpose. You see Lord Geoffrey, the young knight who won the archery contest last spring. He walks with casual confidence, his sleeves tucked just high enough to show the leather bands around his forearms. You notice how the fabric hugs his frame, how his hair has been freshly trimmed, his boots recently polished. He looks like someone who understands how to be seen. And he is. Women glance toward him. Men nod. The quiet power of looking just right has its own language. It doesn't need to shout. You wonder if he knows, if he's aware of how much he's presenting and how much he's protecting, because beauty, for men, comes with its own vulnerabilities. Appear too polished, and you're called vain. Appear too rugged, and you're overlooked. There's a tightrope here, too. It just casts a different shadow. You overhear two older women near the hearth speaking in hushed tones. "His posture is better this year," one says. "He must be practicing, or he's being coached," the other replies. You know how careful they are now. They chuckle softly into their goblets, but there's no cruelty in it, just recognition. Everyone knows, everyone watches. You look down at your own lap, your fingers twisting the end of your sleeve. You think about how often you've imagined that beauty was only a burden for women. But now, you see it more clearly. It just wears different clothes. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters, and you glance toward the window. A servant boy passes by, balancing a tray. His tunic is plain, unadorned, but his hair is neat. His steps are precise. He knows he's being seen, even if only for a moment. And maybe that's the quiet truth behind all of it. No matter the century, no matter the role, to be beautiful is not only to be adorned, it is to be watched and to know it. The air is thick with herbs today. Bundles of lavender, thyme, and rosemary hang drying near the window, their scent drifting lazily through the room. You run your fingers along the wooden shelf, where dozens of small bottles and jars are carefully arranged. Some are labeled in a flowing script, others sealed with wax. marked only by a color or scent. You're helping your aunt prepare for the autumn festival, and she's asked you to restock her beauty tinctures. She calls them preparations, though others might whisper love potions. That's always the word that makes people lean in, eager but cautious, pretending not to care. You uncork a tiny vial of rosewater and sprinkle a few drops into a bowl. The scent is familiar, gentle, almost melancholy. It lingers in the room like memory. You add a pinch of ground pearls, mix in a sliver of beeswax, and stir slowly until the liquid thickens. This will be used for softening skin, smoothing over age and fatigue, giving the cheeks a glow that seems to come from within. Across the room, your aunt hums as she crushes dried violets with the back of a spoon. She's been doing this for decades, passing her recipes down from mother to daughter. Her fingers are stained from herbs and her nails trimmed short, but her face still holds a kind of quiet radiance, whether it's the tinctures or something deeper. You're not quite sure. She glances at you. "Don't forget the frog bile," she says, as casually as if asking you to pass the butter. You freeze. "Frog bile? For the spot cream," she explains. "Works better than vinegar, especially on freckles." You hesitate, then laugh. Of course it's frog bile. Historians still argue whether these beauty potions were more medicinal or magical. Many were based on folk knowledge, passed down through generations, blending superstition with observation. A dab of honey for healing, crushed eggshell for brightness, vinegar and alum to tighten the skin. But mixed into all this were stranger things. Powdered horn, ox gall, even snail mucus. Your aunt hands you a jar filled with pale green paste. "This one's for firming the jawline," she says. "Use it sparingly. It smells of mustard if you overdo it." You open the lid and recoil slightly. She's not wrong. As the afternoon passes, more bottles are filled and labeled, one for smoother hands, another to scent the breath. There's even a tonic to lighten hair, made from lemon peel and salt, meant to be applied under the sun. You've tried it once. It worked, just enough to catch the light, but it also left your scalp stinging for days. Later, as you wipe your hands on your apron, your aunt sits you down beside her. "Beauty's a craft," she says softly. "Not a blessing. It takes work, mixing, timing, balancing, and above all, discretion." You nod, understanding. Because these mixtures, however natural they seem, aren't always shared openly. You don't bring a bottle of perfume to church. You don't discuss snail balm at the dinner table. You use them quietly, carefully, anointing your skin before bed, dabbing your temples before a gathering, tucking jars away when company arrives. Your aunt lifts a vial of violet syrup, swirling it gently. "This one," she says, "is for the eyes, just a touch under the lashes, brings a sparkle, or so they say." You take it from her and uncork it. The scent is sweet, almost too sweet, like the candies given to children on feast days. You apply a drop with the edge of a cloth, watching your reflection in the basin's surface ripple and settle. Later that night, you sneak back to the cabinet and open a few of the bottles again, out of curiosity more than vanity. You're drawn to the odd ones, the ones with questionable ingredients and odd legends. There's a blue vial that claims to mend broken complexion, whatever that means. A pale powder said to come from crushed dove bones. You don't know if it works, but you know someone once believed it did. And belief, as you've learned, is half the potion. You think about the noble women who use these things before banquets and dances, who murmur their formulas behind folding fans, or trade them in side rooms during hunts. You remember the story of Lady Isolde, who was said to have used a tincture that made men fall into a trance when she passed. Most likely, it was just a strong perfume, or a little too much nutmeg. Still, the myth remains. Even the men have their elixirs. Your brother used to rinse his hair with rosemary and mint before feast days. Your uncle carries a tiny jar of clove oil for his teeth. No one talks about it, but the bottles clink in their bags just the same. You lie in bed that night, your skin still tingling faintly from the violet syrup. You wonder whether these things really change how people see you, or if they simply change how you see yourself. A little more prepared, a little more composed, a little closer to the version of yourself you carry in your mind. It's not vanity, not really. It's ritual, reassurance, control in a world that offers so little of it. You fall asleep with those scents still hovering near your pillow. The faint bite of herbs, the sweetness of rose, the hint of something stranger, earthy, pungent, sharp, a trace of frog bile, maybe, and a whisper of hope. The next morning, the household is buzzing with preparations. A feast is being hosted tonight in honor of a visiting baron and his daughters, and everyone is trying to look their best. Servants rushing through corridors with bolts of fabric, cooks arguing over the doneness of game birds, and maids fetching accessories from trunks that haven't been opened in months. You're in your chamber, staring at a gown laid carefully across the bed. It's new, dyed in a shade of deep plum, embroidered with pale silver thread. But that's not what you're thinking about. Your mind is on the underlayer, the part no one sees, the part that decides how the rest of you will be remembered. It's not called a corset yet. Not exactly, not in the way it will be in centuries to come. But the idea is the same. A fitted bodice, stiffened with reeds or sometimes horn, laced tightly to shape your torso into what the world expects of a beautiful woman, long-waisted, soft-bellied, subtly curved. You hold the garment in your hands. The fabric is coarse inside, but smooth and silken outside. There are no stays of steel yet, no whalebone, just tightness, just breath held for hours at a time. You sit, slide the garment on, and call for your maid. She arrives quickly and begins to lace you up. You stand with your arms slightly raised, eyes forward, like you've practiced. The tug comes gently at first, then firmer, steady, rhythmical. You feel your waist pull inward, your ribs compress slightly. It's not painful, not yet, but it is. Confining. Like being gently folded into a version of yourself that only exists in public. Your breath shortens a little. You press your hands to the frame of the window as the final knot is tied. Then, stillness. You turn to face the mirror. You look proper. That's the word that always comes to mind when you wear this. Not dazzling, not even beautiful. Just correct. Your gown hangs better now. The bodice smoother, the skirt fuller. The image you present is the one they expect. Noble, demure, composed. You sit again, carefully, your back straighter than usual. Movements become measured, deliberate. You can't slouch in this, can't bend quickly, can't eat too much. But in return, you receive something intangible. The quiet nods of approval from older women, the second glances from younger men. You belong. Historians still argue whether these early forms of shaping garments were tools of oppression or subtle expressions of agency. Some say they confined women, literally and symbolically. Others argue they gave women a way to participate in court culture, to craft their image in a world where control was scarce. Maybe both are true. Maybe it depends on who's doing the lacing and why. Your maid tells you, softly, that the Baron's daughters are said to be quite beautiful, slender, like reeds, but not too thin, she adds, almost nervously, still round in the face, rosy, too. You nod. You've heard this before. Because the ideal body of the time isn't actually thin. Not exactly. A certain fullness is prized, soft arms, rounded hips, a belly that hints at fertility and wealth. Being too slim suggests poverty or illness, but too full, and you're mocked in verse. There's a narrow window where the body becomes art, full enough to show comfort, delicate enough to suggest restraint. It's a balance you've learned to walk carefully. Honeyed wine in the evening, light broth in the day. A few skipped meals before gatherings. No one speaks of it aloud, but everyone knows. You remember a song performed last spring that praised a lady's milk-colored arms and stomach like warm dough. The audience chuckled, but the lady in question blushed with pride. It was a compliment. Dough meant softness, warmth, life. But you also remember your friend Eveline, whose body never fit the mold, too narrow in the hips, too sharp in the jaw. She wore extra padding beneath her skirts and let her hair down more often, to soften her angles. She was clever and kind, but that was rarely the first thing noticed. You once asked her if it bothered her. Not as much as pretending it doesn't, she said, and smiled. Bittersweet. This evening, you'll sit through hours of conversation, light laughter, and careful observation. You'll eat little, drink even less. Your posture will remain perfect, and when you rise to dance, your frame will hold steady, supported from within. But for now, you walk slowly around your room, feeling the garment settle into your bones. It's not entirely uncomfortable. It makes you more aware of yourself. Each movement feels rehearsed, like a line in a play. You are being watched, yes, but you are also performing. You get to choose the rhythm, the angle, the pause. That's the secret, you think. The structure doesn't only hold you, it highlights you, frames you like a painting in a gilded chapel. It shapes how others see you. And sometimes, it even shapes how you see yourself. You return to the mirror, smoothing the front of your bodice once more. The reflection stares back, composed and complete. Tonight, they'll see a woman in control, even if you can't quite breathe all the way in. The following day, your corset lies folded neatly atop the trunk, untouched. There is no feast tonight. No noble guests to impress, no poetry to smile politely through. The manner feels quieter, simpler, and so does your reflection, still in its undergown. Your waist unbound, your arms bare to the shoulder. You stretch for the first time in days, arms reaching upward toward the wooden beams, and feel the satisfying pull of breath filling your lungs all the way. You step outside barefoot onto the cool stones of the courtyard, where the morning sun breaks softly through thinning clouds. There's work to be done, though not yours. Still, you watch. In the fields beyond the orchard wall, you spot the laborers moving steadily through rows of greens and roots. There's a rhythm to their movement, a kind of grace born not of etiquette, but of necessity. No one's posture is perfect. but every motion has purpose. You focus on one woman, a peasant with sun-darkened skin and strong hands. Her sleeves are rolled high, revealing forearms that flex with each pull of the harvest. Her hair is covered, yes, but loose strands stick to her neck with sweat. And her cheeks, they're flush with real color, not from rouge, not from cinnabar, just from being alive under the open sky. You lean on the stone wall, chin resting on your hand, and watch as she lifts a full basket over one shoulder, strides to the wagon, and sets it down with practiced ease. Her expression is calm, not self-conscious, not performing, just present. You wonder how often she's seen as beautiful. Not called beautiful, perhaps, but noticed, admired in silence by the stable hand who always offers to carry her baskets. Glanced at twice by the baker's son when he pretends to need more apples. You've seen it happen. It's a different kind of beauty. One that doesn't depend on powders or veils or posture. It doesn't glitter in candlelight, but it glows in the sun. It's not shaped by corsets or softened by ointments. It comes from breath and sweat and work. It doesn't need to hold still. It moves. You turn back inside as the cook calls your name. She needs help in the still room. Nothing fancy, just sorting bundles of dried herbs and tying them for storage. Your hands are soon dusted in thyme and lavender, fingers stained faintly green. You don't bother to wash the color out right away. It feels honest. By afternoon, your face is warm, flushed from the kitchen's heat and the sun spilling through the windows. When you catch your reflection in the polished lid of the butter churn, you pause. You look different, not polished, not proper, but radiant. Maybe not in the usual sense. There's a looseness in your expression, a softness at the corners of your mouth that isn't studied. You smile, just a little. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were ever seen as beautiful by those above them. Paintings rarely capture them with dignity. Poems rarely mention them by name. But in real life, away from scrolls and portraits, there's always someone watching, someone noticing, someone drawn not to perfection, but to presence. And isn't that what beauty is, sometimes? Not artifice, but aliveness. You think of your cousin, who spends hours each morning hiding freckles, and the field girl who never seems to notice hers. One called blemish, one called charm. You visit the dairy later that day, helping churn cream for the evening supper. It's messy work, your gown splattered, your arms sore from stirring, but the milk thickens slowly, sweet and pale, and the older women laugh with open mouths and unguarded joy. One of them nudges you. "You've got that glow," she says, "like you've been running through a meadow." You laugh, surprised. No one said that to you before. That night, you don't dress for dinner. You wear your work gown. You wash your hands, but not too thoroughly. You leave your hair pinned loosely, and you don't reach for powder or rosewater or color. And somehow, in the soft candlelight of the kitchen table, beneath the low beams, beside the fire, you feel seen, not by everyone, just by one or two faces, passing glances that linger a moment longer than they used to. And that's enough. Not every kind of beauty comes with poetry. Some comes with calluses, some with flushed cheeks and tired feet, some with the quiet pride of knowing your face isn't shaped to impress, but it still tells the truth. Later, alone in your chamber, you pass the mirror. The glass catches only the edges of your face, lit by a single candle. There's no rouge, no veil, no silver thread, but something in your eyes still holds a flicker of light. You blow out the flame and slip into bed. Tonight, no one's watching. And still, you shine. The morning is quieter than usual, but not in a peaceful way. There's a hush in the halls of the manor, the kind that follows bad news. A servant passes your door, walking more quickly than usual. You hear low voices downstairs, nervous, clipped. Something has happened. You step out into the corridor, still in your nightgown, and make your way down the stairs. The steward is speaking with your aunt in a tight whisper, but you catch the words as you approach. Someone in the village has fallen ill. Again. You know what that means. Quarantine, at least. Maybe more. Depending on what kind of illness it is. Rash, fever, swelling. You've seen it before. The blotches on skin, the wheezing breath, the way people begin to avoid each other without being told to. It's fear, yes, but also practicality. Disease moves quickly, and it doesn't care about status or manners or powdered cheeks. You return to your room, the air in your lungs suddenly heavier. You open the window to let in fresh air and pull your shawl tight. Across the field, the village seems unchanged. Smoke curls from chimneys, and distant voices carry on the wind. But now you see it differently. Every cough, every red mark on someone's face could mean something more. You sit by the mirror, reaching instinctively for your powder jar. But then you hesitate, because in times like this, powder isn't only for beauty, it's for cover. You've seen how quickly blemishes become suspicion. A simple rash from a too warm collar, a pimple from a poorly rinsed balm, none of them dangerous. But once someone sees a mark, it becomes a question, then a whisper, then a distance. You remember the last time illness passed through town? Your friend Mariette had a patch of redness under her chin. She said it was from new soap, but people grew quiet when she entered a room. She began wearing thicker veils, longer sleeves. Eventually, she stopped attending gatherings altogether. She was never truly sick, but that didn't matter. Historians still argue whether medieval cosmetics were used more for beauty or for disguise. Perhaps they were always both. A dusting of white powder could smooth the complexion or mask early symptoms. A flush of rouge might enhance the cheeks or conceal a fever's bloom. In your world, appearance is often the first defense. Today, you prepare more carefully than usual. Your under-eye shadows are darker after a restless night, and your skin feels dry. You mix a balm with honey and rosemary, smooth it over your face, and wait. Then powder. Then a touch of rose water on your neck. The steps are the same, but the intent has changed. You're not trying to look more beautiful. You're trying to look more healthy. It's a quiet fear that sits behind every brushstroke, because once the suspicion sets in, there's no explaining it away. A single cough in the chapel becomes a rumor by dusk. A sheen of sweat becomes the first sign. You've seen women touch their faces less, speak more slowly, stand farther from their friends, just to avoid being noticed. And when someone is truly sick, the disguises grow more elaborate, veils drawn tighter, gloves worn longer. You remember a noblewoman who came to a wedding last year with her face painted so heavily it cracked when she smiled. She was beautiful, yes, but also too still, too pale. She left before the second course. Someone said she'd taken ill and traveled against her doctor's orders. Others said she'd only come to be seen, to remind everyone she still belonged. No one ever saw her again. You walk to the courtyard, clutching your shawl. The wind is colder now. Your breath curls into the air. The steward passes by, nodding grimly, and you ask without asking. Was it confirmed? He pauses, then shakes his head. Too early to say. That's the problem. It's always too early, until it's too late. You return inside, wash your hands in cold water, and study your reflection again. Your face looks calm, composed, painted as usual, but your eyes tell the truth. Tired, watchful, you brush your hair back and pin it more tightly than usual. Secure, controlled. Because when everything else feels uncertain, routine becomes protection. You visit the still room that afternoon, offering to help prepare herbal mixtures, elderberry for the throat, chamomile for sleep, clove to chew for clean breath. The air in the room is warm and sharp, filled with the scent of dried leaves and hope. The cook brews a tonic for the servants. You help stir it. Honey and vinegar and garlic. You wince at the smell, but drink your share. Everyone does. It's not pleasant, but it's better than fear. That night, at supper, the mood is subdued. Conversation sticks to weather, harvest, and who hasn't been seen lately. You sip slowly, smiling when required, your hands folded neatly in your lap. You've dressed carefully, everything in place. You don't touch your face. You laugh gently, once or twice, to show you're fine. Because in a time of sickness, health becomes the new beauty. Clear eyes, steady hands, even breathing. These become your ornaments. The candlelight flickers. You glance around the table, noting who's wearing more powder than usual, who's gone without, who keeps dabbing their face with a cloth, who's drinking water instead of wine. No one says it aloud, but everyone is watching. You excuse yourself early and return to your chamber. Before you remove your veil, you check the mirror one last time. You look beautiful, but tonight, that isn't what you're hoping for. You just hope to look safe. The following week brings a soft shift in the air. The illness scare fades as quickly as it arrived. False alarm, they say. Still, something lingers. Not fear exactly, but awareness. You carry it with you like an invisible ribbon tied around your wrist. A reminder that being seen, truly seen, is more than beauty. It's performance, timing, poise, and now the court is watching. There's word of a traveling poet visiting the estate this week, invited by the steward to entertain the household with songs and verses. He arrives just before dusk, wrapped in a threadbare cloak, his boots worn from the road, but his voice is like velvet, deep and fluid, filling the hall with stories of knights and stars and doomed romance. You sit near the fireplace, hands folded neatly, and listen as the room leans forward. Everyone loves a good love story, especially when it isn't theirs. His eyes sweep the crowd as he recites, not searching for approval, but for inspiration, for the muse. That's how it always goes. A lady glimpsed across a room, her cheeks alight from the fire, a curl fallen just so from beneath her veil, a laugh that breaks through the formality like spring rain. Tonight, the firelight catches your profile. He pauses, ever so slightly, and then the poem continues. You feel your breath catch, not from embarrassment, but from possibility. Because in a world where beauty is mostly silent, being noticed aloud is something else entirely. This is courtly love, not real love, not the kind that ruins you or binds you, but the kind that makes you the subject of a verse, the center of a gaze, the pause between lines. You've seen it before. Lady Catherine, last autumn, who wore blue on a feast day and became the winter star in a sonnet. Or the merchant's niece, whose shy smile earned her a whole ballad, 3 stanzas and a chorus. She never married the poet, but for months, she glowed like a candle. Historians still argue whether courtly love ever touched real emotion. Was it artful flirting wrapped in metaphor? A safe outlet for longing among people bound by marriage and status? Or did it truly spark something real, if fleeting? You think it's both? Because even when it's all for show, the feeling still warms you. And when you catch someone looking at you like you're the beginning of a story, you stand a little straighter, smile a little slower. The poet finishes his set with a flourish. Applause ripples through the hall, then laughter, then wine. Everyone relaxes a little, loosened by music and candlelight. You rise to walk the perimeter of the room. Your sleeves brush the edge of your gown just right. Your steps measured, almost floating. You know how this works. You've practiced. And still, it surprises you when someone leans forward, a visiting squire, perhaps, and says softly, "He was looking at you when he said, 'light on snow.'" You feign confusion, a polite smile, but your pulse quickens anyway, not because of the poet, not even because of the line, but because you've entered the poem. Even briefly, you become part of the performance. That night, you return to your room and take extra care removing your veil. You comb your hair slowly, letting it fall across your shoulders in soft waves. You smooth balm onto your lips, not because anyone will see them now, but because you will. You whisper the line to yourself, "Light on snow," and smile. The next morning, the manor is buzzing again. Someone is painting a scene from last night's performance. The steward wants a record of the event, a fresco, perhaps, or a tapestry. You wonder, half jokingly, whether your profile might be included. Perhaps you'll be the one gazing from the shadows while the poet sings. You wouldn't mind that? In this world, being looked at is one kind of power, but being remembered, that's something else. As the days pass, the poet lingers, not for your sake, not directly, but you cross paths often enough, at meals, in the gardens, in the chapel, and each time there's a softness in the glance. No declarations, no stolen letters, just awareness. That's the heart of courtly love. It's not consummated, it's imagined. It lives in the in-between. You catch him writing once in the orchard, quill moving steadily across a small piece of vellum. He doesn't look up, but when you walk by, your steps slow just slightly. A breath, a pause, that's all. And still, it feels like a moment. Back inside, you help prepare dried herbs for winter. You grind them slowly, thinking of nothing and everything. Your reflection catches in a copper pot, just for a second. You do look different, not because of powder or cream, not because of the weather or the lighting, but because you've been seen. And in being seen, something within you wakes. Your aunt once told you, beauty that hides is safer, but beauty that glows, that's when you must be careful. You didn't understand her then. Now, maybe you do, because courtly love never asks for your hand, just your presence, your gaze, your hint of a smile when the line is right. But oh, how powerful it feels to be the verse instead of the reader. You slip into bed that night with your face bare, your hair loose, your breath steady. There's no mask left, no veil, just you. glowing softly in the dark, not from desire, but from recognition. And that, too, is a kind of beauty. 2 days after the poet leaves, a new name begins to flutter through the halls like a fallen feather drifting along the stone floor. Not a noble, not a singer, not a merchant bearing gifts. A healer, or, depending on whom you ask, a wise woman, or a herb wife, or, in a whisper, a witch. Her name is Merowyn. She's come from the woods east of the village, summoned by Lady Isabeau for a persistent skin ailment. Nothing serious, just a cluster of warts on the backs of her hands. You've seen them. They're small, barely visible. But Lady Isabeau is not the kind to leave imperfections unattended. You're called to serve tea during her visit. You watch Merowyn carefully. She's older than you expected, perhaps 50, maybe more, but with sharp eyes and steady hands. She carries a pouch of herbs, a jar of beeswax, and a small knife she uses to cut plant stems and slice apples. Her hair is wrapped in a dark cloth, and her clothing smells faintly of damp soil and mint. Lady Isabeau lifts her hands toward the firelight. Merowyn examines them in silence, muttering now and then, not to Isabeau, but to herself. Finally, she opens her pouch and begins mixing a thick paste. Garlic, honey, fig milk. Nothing you haven't seen before. But the air in the room feels tight. Not from the ingredients, but from something less visible. You pour the tea slowly, careful not to spill a drop. Because even as Lady Isabeau thanks her, even as she pays her with a silver coin wrapped in linen, Merowyn remains an object of curiosity, admired and feared in the same breath. And just like that, the conversation turns from her salves to her stories. Someone says she once healed a baby who wouldn't cry. Someone else claims she lives alone with black chickens and keeps bones on her windowsill. One girl whispers that she wears a wig made from her mother's hair. You don't know if that's true, but it spreads. Because when a woman lives outside the expected mold, outside the village, outside the rules, outside the beauty script, she becomes a question mark, and that can be dangerous. Historians still argue whether the witch trials that later swept through Europe were driven more by fear of the unknown, by envy, or by control. But one thing is clear: beauty and danger were often neighbors. Too plain, and you were scorned. Too alluring, and you were suspect. And if your beauty defied age or illness or explanation, you risked more than gossip. You remember a story your grandmother told you about a woman with hair so black it shimmered blue in the sunlight. She never married, never aged, and was later accused of using nightshade to enchant young men. She was drowned in a river. Your grandmother didn't tell it like a warning, more like a spell of its own. You stare at your reflection that night, tracing the line of your jaw, the mole just above your cheek, not large, not dark, but still there. You've never thought much of it, but now you wonder what it might mean to someone else. A mark, a charm, a flaw. You open your drawer and reach for the powder, dabbing just enough to blur the edges. You tell yourself it's not about hiding, just smoothing. In the days that follow, you hear more about Merowyn. Lady Isabeau says her hands are improving, but others begin to say Merowyn made them worse on purpose, so she could return. Someone claims to have seen her talking to a crow. Another insists she never blinks. It's always like this. The farther a woman stands from society's center, the more shadows she collects, and appearance becomes part of the mystery. Wigs, for instance, are a point of debate. Some noble women wear them for fashion, others to cover illness or age. But if a common woman wears one, especially one who deals in herbs and night-blooming flowers, it becomes something else. A disguise, a trick, a warning. You help your aunt comb out her hair one evening. She's older now, and the strands come out more easily. As you gather them into the brush, she says softly, "If I ever go bald, I'll weave a wig from my old curtains and wear it with pride." You laugh. She doesn't. "I'm serious," she says. "Better that than someone else making up stories about me." You think about Merowyn again, about the stories that gather around her like moss on stone, about how even healing becomes suspect if the healer looks wrong, or says too little, or smiles at the wrong time. And you wonder, how much of beauty is trust? When you see someone with clear skin, soft hair, and bright eyes, you assume they're safe, kind, good. But what if they aren't? And what if someone plain and hunched and silent offers you a cure that truly works? Do you take it? Or do you wait for someone more proper? Beauty, you realize, doesn't just shape admiration, it shapes belief. And when it falters, when a face looks too sharp or too perfect or too odd, belief falters too. That night, you write her name in the edge of your diary, Merowyn, just to see how it looks. The letters feel old, rooted, not pretty, but powerful. Before bed, you leave your powder untouched. You let your mole remain uncovered, and in the dark, with the shutters closed and the wind whistling low outside. You imagine her walking through the forest, her skirt brushing the ferns, her eyes sharp, her beauty not in softness, but in certainty. And suddenly, you understand, some women were never meant to be muses. They were meant to be myths. The next morning, you wake earlier than usual, chilled and restless beneath the linen sheets. The hearth has gone cold, and outside the shutters you hear the low squawk of hens and the distant bark of a farm dog. It's washing day, not a full bath, not yet, but a heated basin, a cloth, and the quiet ritual of wiping the skin clean in parts. You sit on the stool near the fireplace as your maid pours warmed water into the copper basin. Steam curls into the air, carrying the faint scent of thyme and soaproot. She hands you a cloth, steps back respectfully, and lets you begin. You dip the cloth and wipe your arms, your neck, behind your ears, quick, practiced motions. This is not indulgence, it's maintenance. Because in your world, bathing is complicated. You've grown up hearing both warnings and praise. Some say water cleanses the spirit. Others say too much. Water weakens the body. Too warm, and you might catch illness. Too cold, and you'll ruin your humors. And always, always, there's the question of modesty. A woman alone in water is one thing. A woman seen bathing, even by accident, is quite another. So you wash in pieces. The last full bath you took was nearly a month ago, in a wooden tub hauled up from the cellar, set beside the fire, and filled with bucket after bucket of heated water. The bath was shared, not at once, but in turns. Your aunt went first, then your cousin, then you. The water grew increasingly cloudy. By the end, it smelled faintly of lavender, sweat, and soap. But it was still considered a luxury. Today, you run the damp cloth down your calves, over your ankles. You pause at your feet. They're calloused from walking barefoot indoors, slightly pink at the heels. You could soften them with rose balm, but you decide not to. Not today. Historians still argue how often medieval people bathed. The records are inconsistent. Some claim weekly washing in certain towns. Others say noble women bathed only a few times a year. But almost all agree that full immersion was rare, and even then, it was seasonal, careful, and layered with ritual. Still, beauty and cleanliness walk a delicate line. Too clean, and you're considered vain. Too fragrant, and you're hiding something. But not clean enough, and people talk. You recall a nobleman's wife from a few seasons ago, sent back to her family in disgrace, not for adultery, not for theft, but because her husband said she smelled of vinegar and kitchen heat. She wept when the carriage pulled away. You dry off with a linen cloth and dust your skin lightly with ground orris root, a fine powder with a floral, almost citrus scent. It leaves a slight shimmer. It's not perfume, exactly, but it hints at freshness. You pin your hair up, choosing not to oil it today. Let it breathe. Let it be. Later, you visit the laundry house, where steam pours from the stone vents and women sing under their breath while pounding linens clean. One of them, an older woman with thick forearms and a red kerchief, notices you watching and winks. "Don't let the churchmen scare you," she says, her voice rasping. "Water never killed anyone. Bad husbands do that." You try not to laugh, but it escapes anyway. Warm and sudden. The woman shrugs and returns to her washing, humming a tune you half remember from childhood. Her skin glows with sweat and soap, her apron damp, her face flush from heat and work. She looks alive in a way few noble women do. You wonder what people say of her beauty. Probably nothing, and yet, you return home that evening to find a letter on your pillow, your cousin, away in the city, writing of her new bathhouse. She says it's beautiful, tiled floors, high windows, scented oils. "We bathe weekly now," she writes. "I think it's making my skin softer. The men notice, but the women, they envy." You set the letter aside and trace your fingers along your arm. The skin is not soft today. It's dry in places, faintly rough, but it's yours. Honest, present. That night, as you settle into bed, you think about all the ways beauty is shaped without mirrors, by cloth and water, by what is hidden and what is rinsed away, by how we smell, and who gets close enough to notice. You think of bathhouses in other lands, places where women bathe together, laughing, pouring oil into one another's palms, in Spain, in the Ottoman Empire, even in parts of Italy, places where bathing isn't a risk, but a celebration. But not here. Here. Baths are quiet, private, incomplete, yet you do what you can. Before you slip under the blanket, you smooth your feet with a little balm after all, just enough to ease the roughness. You don't do it for anyone else, just for comfort. And maybe that's the truest kind of beauty, when no one is watching, and you take care anyway, not for praise, not for poetry, just to feel whole. The following Sunday, you sit quietly in the chapel pews as incense weaves its way through the high arches. Sunlight pours through the stained glass windows, painting colored pools of light across the flagstone floor. You've always liked this part of the service, the stillness just before the sermon, the quiet hum of bodies breathing in rhythm, the way the light makes even dust look holy. But today, your eyes are fixed upward, not on the priest, not on the altar, but on the saints. More precisely, on their faces. They look perfect. Smooth cheeks, luminous skin, brows finely arched, lips pale and small, eyes turned modestly downward. Even the martyrs, with their flaming hearts and pierced hands, glow with an impossible serenity. Not one blemish, not one shadow of doubt. Above the altar, a painted Mary gazes down with celestial calm, her head slightly tilted, her skin the color of ivory. Her robes swirl around her like silk caught in a gentle breeze, though you know they were painted with painstaking care by a man who'd never seen a woman wash her own hair, let alone give birth. You shift slightly in your seat. Your own skin feels flushed today, not from heat, but from comparison. You're wearing a pale rose veil and a clean shift. Your face powdered just enough to blur the small shadows under your eyes. You did everything right this morning. And still, you do not look like her. You don't look like any of them. You glance around the room. Neither does anyone else. The older women have creases around their mouths. The younger girls have freckles, flushed noses, crooked teeth. Beautiful, yes, but human. So, why don't the saints look like us? Historians still argue how much influence church art had on medieval beauty standards. Did the images shape society? Or did society demand its ideals be reflected on sacred walls? Perhaps both. But in places like this, quiet, reverent, filled with unspoken rules, you can't help but feel that these painted women are not just symbols of holiness. They're standards, and you, somehow, fall short. After the service, you linger in the chapel, watching as others drift out into the courtyard. You stay behind, standing before the altar, staring up at Saint Cecilia. Her hands are folded, her gown is flawless, her face is a mask of calm. But you know what happened to her. The stories say she was beheaded more than once, and still sang hymns with half her neck open to the air. You've read the stories. You've even repeated them aloud. But now, as you look into her serene, spotless face, you wonder, where is the strain, the fear, the blood? Where is the truth? You walk slowly along the wall, past other saints, other Madonnas. Each one glows with unnatural light, lips parted just so, their beauty frozen into perfection, a perfection that no real woman could maintain. Not while raising children, not while surviving winter, not while carrying water uphill before sunrise. You reach the end of the row, where a newer painting has begun to fade. The paint has cracked along the jawline, exposing the rough plaster beneath. It's a small flaw, but you can't stop staring at it, because suddenly, it feels honest. You touch your own jaw, no powder now, just skin, soft in places, rough in others, real, later, at home. You sit before your mirror and take a long, unhurried look. The reflection staring back isn't flawless. Your cheeks have the faintest blotch. Your brows are uneven. A small scar from last spring's nettle sting sits near your left temple. But today, you don't reach for the powder. Instead, you reach for your sketchbook. You begin to draw, not yourself exactly, but a face like yours. A saint, perhaps, but one with laugh lines, one with a scar, one with tired eyes that still shine. You draw slowly, carefully, not as a rebellion, not even as a statement, just because it feels right. You wonder what would happen if one of those saints had looked like this. If someone had dared to paint a holy woman with calloused hands or a crooked smile, would she still have been venerated? Or would she have been dismissed as too ordinary? You think of the girls who sit in the pews week after week, staring up at perfection, of how many of them, like you, learn to hold in their stomachs, tilt their heads, paint their lips pale to look more pure, not more faithful. just more acceptable. Because sometimes, beauty becomes a kind of religion all its own. And like any religion, it requires belief, ritual, sacrifice. You press the tip of your charcoal against the parchment, shading the corners of the saint's eyes. A little darkness, a little depth. You leave one strand of hair out of place. You shade the curve of her nose just a bit off center. And still, she's beautiful. More than that, she's familiar. That night, you kneel by your bedside and whisper a prayer, not to the painted saints, but to something quieter, older, wiser, something that knows beauty doesn't always shine from gilded frames. Sometimes it glows from within, especially when no one's looking. It's late afternoon when your aunt calls you to the storage room behind the still room, where the light filters in dimly through a high, dusty window. Rows of jars line the shelves, dark glass, clay pots sealed with wax, paper-wrapped bundles tied with twine. It smells of beeswax, dried petals, and something you can't quite name. Sharp, earthy, maybe even animal. She's sorting supplies for winter, and you've been asked to help take inventory. But more than that, you suspect she wants to teach you, not just what to use, but how to use it, and what never to speak of. You pull down a small jar labeled Unguentum ad Fatium and open it slowly. It smells faintly sweet and metallic, with a creamy yellow sheen. Crocodile dung, your aunt says casually, checking a list on parchment. Imported, mixed with goat fat, good for smoothing skin. You blink, looking back at the jar in your hand. Don't wrinkle your nose, she adds. It works better than most. You place it down gently. The next jar is filled with something white and flaky. Crushed dove bones, she says, before you even ask. To whiten the teeth, some ladies use it in powder form, but I prefer to mix it into a paste. You open your mouth to speak, then close it again. Because as strange as it seems, you know this isn't new. You've heard of these ingredients before, passed between women like secrets, stories wrapped in whispers. Beauty is full of oddities, but they all come with purpose. Ox gall for brightening the eyes, pigeon droppings for softening the skin, snail mucin for smoothing wrinkles, ground coral, burnt oyster shells, even crushed emerald, if you could afford it, and yes, once, frog bile, though that was for freckles, not glamour. You pick up a narrow vial filled with thick green liquid. Its cork is stained. That one, your aunt says, sap from fig trees, used to remove warts, but some say it burns the skin. Only a drop or two. You return it to the shelf quickly. Historians still argue whether medieval beauty recipes were based on scientific knowledge or superstition. In truth, they were both. Women knew what worked, sometimes by trial and error, sometimes by word of mouth, sometimes because an abbess had written it in the margin of a prayer book, or because a mother whispered it to her daughter the night before a wedding. But knowing what worked didn't always mean understanding why. You continue cataloging, scribbling down notes as your aunt cross-checks from memory. You pause at a jar filled with small dark seeds. Henbane, she says. You raise your eyebrows. It's not for beauty, she clarifies. Not anymore. But once, long ago, women used a trace of it to enchant the eyes, to widen the pupils, to make them look more receptive. You swallow. And dangerous, you ask? She looks at you then, closely, not unkindly. All beauty is dangerous, she says, almost to herself. You finish the list and return to the main room, where the light is warmer and the floor doesn't creak so much underfoot. You wash your hands, but the scent lingers. Not unpleasant, just odd, like touching stories older than language. You sit with your aunt at the work table as she grinds dried violets into a fine powder. "Remember," she says, "not everything in these jars is for the face. Some are for confidence, some are for memory, some are for silence." You don't ask what she means. You already know. Later that evening, in your room, you unwrap a small parcel from the back of the shelf. Inside is a stick of solid balm, amber in color, wrapped in silk. It's meant for the lips. The last time you used it, you were 15. You dabbed it on before the harvest festival, and a boy looked at you for longer than was polite. You never spoke to him again, but you remember the way it felt, that strange blend of wonder and discomfort. Knowing something so simple could change how someone looked at you. You apply a little now, just to see if it still smells the same. It does, slightly spicy, slightly sweet. Your lips tingle, then settle. You look at yourself in the mirror, not transformed, just different. More like the version of you who knows what's in the jars, who knows what each scent means, what each powder promises. It's easy to mock these things, to call them foolish, superstitious. But the truth is, they work. Not always how you expect, but they shape the world nonetheless. You've seen a room go quiet when a woman enters wearing just the right scent. You've seen a man forget what he was saying because of a shimmer on someone's cheekbone. You've seen envy turn into reverence, all because of a touch of color. And you've seen women carry these recipes like weapons, not to wound, but to survive, to control how they're seen, to choose the version of themselves they offer to the world. Not a lie. A tool. A language. You place the balm back in its wrapping and slide it into your drawer. You're not planning to use it tomorrow, but you might, and that, in itself, is enough. The candle beside your bed burns low tonight, its wick a soft orange ember trembling in the draft from the window. You lie back on your pillows, arms folded beneath the covers, watching the flickering shadows stretch and then fall apart across the ceiling beams. It's quiet, just the sound of distant wind outside and the soft creak of wood settling. It's been a long day, a long season, in truth. And as the wax melts lower in its dish, you begin to realize how much has changed, not in the world around you, but within you. You don't remember when it started. Perhaps it was during the poet's visit, or after you helped grind violets into powder, or when you stared too long at a painted saint and felt something inside shift. But now, the idea of beauty, what it means, what it asks, no longer sits where it used to. You still wear the powder. You still pin your hair. You still dab the balm on your lips when you need to feel steady, but it no longer feels like armor or obligation. It feels like a choice, and that makes all the difference. You turn your head slightly on the pillow, facing the dim mirror across the room. Your reflection is barely visible, just a blur of warmth and outline. No clear details, just softness. And it's enough. You think about the ideals you were raised with, the pages of illuminated books, the portraits of noble brides, the saints with perfect cheeks and heavenly posture, the rules whispered by aunts and grandmothers and chapel nuns, how to walk, how to speak, how to sit in silence and be watched. So much of it was meant to protect you, to guide you through a world that didn't always listen to your voice, but always noticed your face. And for a time, you accepted it all, dutifully, earnestly, without question. Because to be beautiful was to be safe, and to be safe was the best you could hope for. But lately, safety doesn't feel like the goal. Now, you find yourself craving something else. Not applause, not admiration, just honesty. The kind of beauty that doesn't flinch when the candlelight falls harsh across a wrinkle. The kind that breathes and stretches and sometimes forgets to smile. The kind that doesn't care if its hair is pinned perfectly. You remember the field woman again, the one with the basket slung over her shoulder, cheeks red from sun, hands marked with dirt. She never noticed you watching her. She never needed to. That's what you want now. Not the gaze, not the performance, the being. You swing your feet out from the bed and stand barefoot on the cool floorboards. The night air hugs your shoulders as you cross to the window and unhook the latch. The shutters groan a little as they open, revealing the ink-dark sky beyond. Stars, clear, scattered, old. You take a breath. No mirror here, no candle, just you, wrapped in a shift, hair loose, skin clean. You think about all the strange ingredients you've worn on your face, all the colors you've dabbed onto your cheeks, all the rituals you've followed without knowing why. You're not ashamed of them. Some were lovely, some were strange. All were part of a language you've spent your whole life learning. But now, you wonder if there's another language beneath it, one that doesn't require a veil, or rouge, or the approval of a room. Maybe beauty doesn't disappear when the powder fades. Maybe it just changes shape. Historians will debate what beauty meant in your time. They'll collect recipes, study paintings, catalog hairpins and petticoats. They'll call it fashion, ritual, status, seduction. But they won't know how it felt to stand here, alone in the dark, and be enough. They won't know the weight of the gaze, or the relief of its absence. They won't know the freedom of unfastened laces, the whisper of a shift brushing bare legs, the way your skin smells of time and sleep. Only you will know that. You close the shutters and step back toward the bed. The candle has almost burned itself out, just a small pool of melted wax and a tired flame. You let it go. You slide beneath the covers and pull them up to your chin. Tomorrow. Maybe you'll wear the balm again. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll laugh too loudly in the orchard. Maybe you'll walk barefoot to the well. Maybe you'll dance before supper just to see what your skirts feel like in motion. Maybe you'll be beautiful. Maybe you'll just be. The candle flickers once more and then dies. And in the dark, you smile. Because now you know, beauty was never only what they told you. It was the parts they couldn't name. It was you, all along. And now, as the story gently settles and the night wraps itself around your room, you let your eyes rest. The world of painted saints, powdered faces, veiled glances, and whispered rituals begins to fade. The candle is gone. The mirror sleeps. Even the questions that once tugged at you, am I enough? Do I belong? Fall silent. You are no longer in the manor, no longer beneath velvet hoods or beside chapel walls. You are somewhere softer now, between warmth and stillness, where breath slows and thought melts into calm. Let your shoulders ease. Let your face relax. No smile to hold, no gaze to meet. Just you, skin bare, heart quiet. Not a character in a story anymore. Not a name in a book. just a human being at rest. If you feel the weight of all the old expectations drifting to the floor like fabric puddling at your feet, that's all right. Let them stay there. You don't need to pick them up tonight. Let the centuries roll backward like a scroll being gently closed. Let the saints close their eyes. Let the jars on the still room shelf cool under dust. Let the sky outside remain just as it is, dark, calm, indifferent, and full of stars. You did not need to be flawless to be seen. You did not need to be painted to be remembered. You were beautiful, even when no one said so, even when no one looked. And tonight, you are safe. Sleep now, in the hush between stories. Sleep gently.